Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, hosted by the American Public Human Services Association, or APHSA, in partnership with EY. Today's webinar topic is Improving SNAP Performance with Immersive Digital Training. Next slide, please. My name is Alex Claremont, and I'm the Senior Content Writer here at APHSA. I would like to take a minute to share with everyone an overview of APHSA and the work we do for and with our members. APHSA is a member organization that represents state and local human services agencies from across the country through top-level leadership. Next slide. We aim to deliver for our members through three core channels: influencing modern policies and practices with the goal of strengthening communities, building capacity through our conferences, technical expertise, publications, and OE consulting practice, and connecting members across a wide circle of stakeholders in the human services sector with key partners. Next slide. Speaking of connecting, I invite you all to save the date for the next APHSA conference being held this year. The NSDTA Annual Education Conference, hosted by APHSA and our affinity group, the National Staff Development Training Association, will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from October 22nd to 25th. Check back on the APHSA website for more information on this conference, including when registration opens. So just some light housekeeping items for this webinar. During the presentation, we are requesting that you put your questions for our presenters in the Q&A panel rather than the typical Zoom chat feature. If possible, panelists will try to answer questions during the presentations, but there will also be time left at the end for questions. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared with all registrants in the coming days after the webinar is finished. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for our panel discussion, Jerry Cully, Senior Manager of Health and Human Services at EY.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, attendees and all panelists. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar today. The three of us, myself, Casey, and Sherelle, are super excited to talk to you today about some really interesting things happening in the world of SNAP performance. I am the Health and Human Services Solution Lead for the country for EY. I've been with EY about 4.5 years now, after serving an entire career in state government in the states of Missouri, Florida, and Texas, supporting and administering public assistance benefits programs, SNAP being one of my favorite programs, likely the most complicated in my opinion, but maybe that's why it's so fun and great. So real excited to be here and moderate. If you'll notice, I am a moderator today. We are flexing and stretching. Brian Knudsen, who was originally slotted to be the moderator, is with unavoidable conflict. He couldn't make it today, but the same or maybe even better is Casey with us. So I'm going to take a moment and let everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll just get right into it. First, I would like to introduce Sherelle Campbell-Street, who has an illustrious and impressive career in state government. So Sherelle, would you like to say some words?
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for that great introduction. I think I'm going to hire you for parties. Hello, everyone. I am Sherelle Campbell-Street, and I have the pleasure of serving over 2 million Tennesseans each year through the Department of Human Services as the Deputy Commissioner. Like Jerry, I have spent my career in the service of others in 3 other states. Primarily working under the helm of persons with disabilities, but I have been in this role for about 4 years too, and we serve a wide variety of Tennesseans through our many different programs: SNAP, TANF, child support, child care licensing, and anything almost to do with serving people with disabilities you would find at the Tennessee Department of Human Services. So really honored and happy to be here. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Sherelle. And also with us today is a colleague of mine from EY who is involved in some really great things that you're going to hear about today. Casey, would you like to do your introduction?
Thank you so much, Jerry. My name is Casey Watson. I'm a leader here in our EY Learning Lab. So we're a group of learning and development specialists who are focused on building behavior changing learning and products. I've been working in learning development for just over 10 years now, focusing on leading some Fortune 500 companies and global serving nonprofits in their learning and development strategy and execution. I'm very excited to be here today in place of Brian.
Wonderful. Thank you, Casey. Okay, so what we thought we'd do today for our fireside chat is talk a little bit about some of the journey that Tennessee has been on. And given their journey, how one of the solutions that we have at EY are really appropriate for and applicable to the work that they've been doing. And we were hoping that many of you might be able to see through this lens different ways of approaching what have been old age problems along the way in this program. So Sherelle, your family assistance team has been on an incredible transformation journey the last few years, and it not unlike many other states at some point, either in the past, now, or planned for their future. Could you tell us about that journey and the impacts it's had on your staff?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you, Jerry. So here in Tennessee, we decided maybe about 11 years ago that we were going to move from being a transactional department to one of being more transformational. The country was moving in a different direction. In terms of the customers that we saw, we still, of course, saw people who were experiencing poverty in many different ways. However, what we discovered is that a lot of the people that were coming through our doors had some type of educational credential, and they were being a little bit more tech savvy than what our paper-driven processes could handle. And so we really started looking at transformation through the lens of technology and how can we better support our customers, both internally and externally, by using different types of systems to navigate the benefits that we offer. It has not been an easy road, as you can imagine, simply because we did have to do a lot of internal trainings about thinking differently about the people that we serve and how can we deliver the service beyond the service. And in other words, what else could we give someone by way of resources and supports that would mitigate them having to come back generationally? And so this has been a very long road for us, but I am excited to say that Tennessee is one of the premier states for a lot of the 2-gen approaches that you find, and it's supported by the wonderful APSHA, along with our partnership with EY, that has allowed us to really transform the way in which we serve families. So I hope that was good. And Jerry, if you allow me to say too, I would love to be on camera, but as technology goes, everything is working but my camera. And you and I talked about the fact that I bought a new dress. So please, everyone, I wish you could see the dress, but yeah, no. So that's why I'm not on camera.
Maybe we can get a picture and share it later. I'd like to see it. Thank you, Sherelle. Just a follow-up question to that, because the transformation journey for you has been long. It probably doesn't ever end for any of us, but you and I have been in these programs, as many of the attendees probably on the call, we've been in these programs for a long, long time. Can you describe to us how you've seen the training needs of staff over time change? What did they look like 10 years ago or 20 years ago versus what are the needs today?
Yeah, great question, Jerry. And so if we were to peel the onion back and look 10 years ago, the department was still very much heavily paper driven in terms of how we showed up in the lives of other people. Of course, our federal partners, they have regulations that we must follow. But what we started to kind of look at is, well, how is the rest of the world managing? How are they showing up to do just about anything? And so what we started doing was starting asking these questions of our staff, like, tell me about your experience in banking, or if you want cable, what does that look like? And then we got down to, we are really wanting to transform the way we do business. What does training look like for you? And what we discovered is over time, we were seeing a younger in spirit as well, a younger employee coming to DHS. What that translated to us is they were very tech savvy. And one of the things that we critically learned early on is they wanted training that was agile and readily available any time of the day or night. So one thing that we started doing is moving away just from the classroom setting of training, particularly around SNAP. Jerry, you mentioned that SNAP is probably one of the most intricate and taxing programs, I think, to administer because there's so many different parts. And you can imagine that when someone is in a training classroom, of course they are absorbing the information, but a lot of times they need to come back. And there's not a scheduled class for that or something. So we wanted to blend our approach to training to offer them also some technology solutions that they could carry their training anywhere they go. That it is available online, that through our app, if you need a refresher. So we started seeing that a blended approach to training was really delivering a lot of wins for us. Some of those wins were unanticipated in terms of some of our older seasoned staff started looking toward the technology for refresher trainings. And so we have been really pleased with this blended approach. I think that there is far more things that we can do around it, but I think for us, the move was really because of what the nation was experiencing, in that our employees were becoming more and more tech savvy and less just being in the classroom or paper driven in terms of their business processes.
Very good. I do want to ask one question about your transformation training, because I thought this is a really great thing that Tennessee DHS did. And this would be for anybody in attendance that's thinking about going through transformation or getting ready to go in. As you've gone into pilot, which your family assistance program is in, it's the SNAP TANF program. I'll just stop with those. And you're getting ready to go into statewide training. In addition to the transformation training that you've all done, you all also provided a bridge training. Could you describe for us what that is?
Yeah, and I'm really excited. Our bridge training, working with one of our partners, is just as the acronym, of course it is an acronym, but bridge training for us is those online supports for employees, as well as now, Jerry, you may not know that we kind of transferred some of that to the customer. What we experience a lot in Tennessee is a high volume of phone calls. And a lot of times the customer really just wants that intimate, detailed, how am I working, or how is my case going, what's going on. What the bridge process has allowed for us to do is have like a buddy, or kind of like a buddy system on with one of our workers that will allow for them to have, like, I call it, you know, those old times when they used to sell encyclopedias door to door, and you could have just that encyclopedia right there at your fingertips. What Bridge allows for us to do is another additional helpmate for our employees as well as our customers to take a deeper dive into what the customer needs are in a real-time fashion. That has been such an amazing help. And actually, it has cut down on some of the phone calls because we translate that information into a customer portal. That customer portal provides real-time information back to the customer through a dashboard. It also provides that needed support for our employee. That bridge person can look up information. They can provide accurate information as a support to that online person really readily. And that has been an amazing process for us. I mean, it's just been one of those game changers.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you, Sherelle. Casey, that sets us up nicely for you to talk about what you have going on. You've been applying new ways to address longstanding business problems for years through a training approach that is immersive and engaging. Tell us what engaged immersive training means. What does it look like? How is it different than traditional training?
Yeah, happy to, Jerry. So I would say that for me, engaging in immersive training doesn't necessarily rely on technology at its core, but it really requires creating an experience that meets learners where they are in the moment that they're taking that training. So I'm sure all of us on this call today have taken training where we felt it didn't apply to us or it wasn't relevant to us right then. And engaging training really understands that modality matches that objective. It's respectful of everybody's time. So where I am at my skill set and the knowledge that I have and come to that training with is valued and respected. And I'm able to move through that training a little bit differently than if I come to that training with no former knowledge or experience in that area. Where I'm seeing moments of remediation, for example, or how I'm asked to challenge myself, or even the way that specific context or perspectives are prioritized in my experience is most important. If you incorporate that kind of thinking, meeting the learner where they are into development, you're both respectful of their time, but you're also able to keep their attitude and their effort in mind. So you're creating an environment where they're much more likely to learn. It goes a really long way to address the things that humans care about and respond to best. So that includes everything from quality of the content and visual appeal to the ease of navigation. Related to Sherelle's earlier point, actually, it's so valuable to look out into the world and see how people ingest meaningful information today in consumer-facing products. And so with that in mind, I know we actually have a short demo that we wanted to share with this group today. So we can go ahead and get that queued up here. And as that starts to play, I'll just share a little bit about this. So we've put together this demo. You know, it's an animated demo. It's based on some static mockups, but showing what a digital experience could look like for this specific topic of SNAP eligibility. So we know that this is an area where training intervention is particularly valuable. And one of the things that's, really impressive about this very brief demo is we were able to pull this together based just on the public-facing policy manual that was
For many
available
SNAP applicants,
online.
income fluctuation is common and expected. As a caseworker, you'll need to anticipate future monthly income and use this figure to calculate the amount of SNAP benefits. It's your job to make a decision that provides the applicant with SNAP benefit certification for the longest period permissible. The following screens will detail the process and key points necessary for successfully projecting income and providing applicants with the most accurate SNAP benefit plan.
So we wanted to showcase a couple of the tools in our pocket. So you're seeing some really nicely designed bite-sized information. The video that you just heard on that previous slide was generated based on an AI asset. And so leveraging those kinds of tools allow us to really quickly and rapidly build high quality training and edit that so that we're able to do that in a timely way. We wanted to highlight a couple specific things in this demo. So system thinking, we recognize that building up that muscle memory for how you interact with a system as you do your day-to-day is particularly important in a digital experience that's meant to simulate that in-person or that day-to-day experience. And then we also wanted to focus on developing soft skills. So in this interaction here, you'll see that, I'm interacting and interviewing a specific individual about that SNAP eligibility, and I'm challenged to proceed through a branched conversation to better understand this unique individual's case and make sure that I'm collecting the right information. So in that conversation, I can end up at any number of endpoints where I'm able to get remediation that's targeted to the very specific choices that I made along the way. And we'll just let that play through. You'll see a couple screens here, more related to the system piece that we spoke about earlier.
So Casey, this is like just going through an interview. It's like an interview simulation. And I think what's cool about it is that there's opportunity to answer incorrectly. And it sort of gives me a prompt that tells me why that might be incorrect or why it might be correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're big believers in the value of learning through remediation. And if you are able to learn in those moments of failure, that is a really huge takeaway. That's where the bulk of that behavior change happens, is I'm seeing the repercussions of a decision that I've made, and I'm seeing how those might play out or why those were incorrect. And I'm able to kind of correct that as I go forward in that journey. But if I'm getting everything right, I'm moving through at a breeze, I may not need that specific context to build up that muscle memory.
Yep. And Casey, I see a question in the Q&A that is really relevant to what you're talking about. It says, how do you meet the learner where they are at when you may have 14 other learners in the class at different stages? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that that is one of the ways in which I would say that asynchronous digital learning really kind of has a little bit of a leg up there. The instructor only has so much of their own time to give in those in-person or synchronous situations where they can give that sort of one-to-one attention. But by leaning into learning technology in a meaningful way and finding opportunities to say, this is an area where we know people really struggle to get through these conversations and come out the other end with all the information they need to effectively make their next decision or make an evaluation. And so we know that everybody kind of skips, we know that everybody varies in how they struggle with those conversations. One person may not be asking enough information. One person may be asking the wrong information. And so building a tool that can support giving remediation to both of those examples and then some really helps you sort of democratize that information in a meaningful way. So my experience may be different from my colleagues' experience, but I'm getting remediation that's specific to the types of areas where I struggle most because I'm leveraging a technological tool that is built for that exact kind of learning.
Yep. Vicki O'Brien has a great question in the chat. She says, is the demo we are seeing something for new staff, or is this a module for seasoned staff?
That's a great question. Yeah. And I think as we were putting together that demo, we were reviewing it as something that would be relevant to both. So like we're talking about, meeting those learners where they are. We certainly have driven or have built learning that is driven to be learner specific at an assignment level. So you are able to move past modules that maybe are not relevant to you, or you're taking an assessment up top to say, I can skip through some of this content that is already foundational content that I know and have experience with because I am an experienced professional in this area. Or we've also incorporated learning where that decision is made more at a remediation level, more at a demonstration level. So if I'm demonstrating throughout the learning that I am knowledgeable about this specific topic or issue, I'm going to move through that much quicker. So trying to find that balance that works best for a specific organization. If those are vastly different, you have much more training, I'm sure, for someone who's brand new versus someone who's experienced. We want to see where those lines of consistency are, where it's going to be powerful to make sure that individuals are seeing the same training, but also be respectful of that knowledge that exists already and make sure that we're keeping the learner's time in mind.
Thank you, Casey. So audience and Sherelle, let's bring it back around let's look at SNAP performance, right? And SNAP performance starts at decisions made by the eligibility worker and how we support them and train them to make the right ones. So Sherelle, over the years, with increasing caseloads, going through COVID, changes in policies and back to the originals, et cetera, I think it's fair to say that Tennessee and all other states has had its fair share of challenges. Regarding program performance and specifically SNAP, can you describe the experience you've had and what you're looking at towards the future to improve that performance?
Absolutely. Jerry, I think one of the things that Tennessee has had opportunities to improve around with our performance is just some inflexibilities around somehow somebody may look at QC data. Or some things as it pertains to maybe a customer did not get us all of the information, those kind of things. What we have really experienced around this as it pertains to training is how do we just send reminders or have these fun little things that we can do, and I say fun in quotes over here, Jerry, I'm air quoting, but what we've been trying to do, yes, what we've been trying to do is look at our technology as a way that we can possibly we do like a round robin, where after a certain amount of time in the system, there are some questions that kind of pop up like, hey, when is, did you remember to get the rent receipts or invoices, kind of things like that, or when do you need to do this? And this is really during a training thing, like when people have finished a module, something would pop up to just kind of say, okay, what's next? And it kind of gives you an opportunity to compete against your other teams in the system to see how many people got it right or how many people do this. It has really given us an opportunity to keep the information very much a part of the day-to-day life, very much still relevant, and keep those things that we find that are some of our challenges around our QC error rate. Keep that at the forethought of our employees' minds by showing things like that in our technology system. The other thing is we're also looking to technology as a means to send reminders to our customers, even when they have a change in the status of their case. One of the, and I'm pretty sure a lot of states are like this, one of the biggest areas that we have a lot of errors in is when someone has a change in their SNAP case, particularly around income or resources. A lot of times they don't necessarily communicate back with the worker. So how do we help or to remind our customers when they need to make some changes? So the system that we are looking forward to in the future will help us by sending reminders. And here's the great thing, Jerry, a lot of times we ask our customers, how do you want us to communicate with you? Now, I realize that there are some F&A rules or F&S rules that say you have to send a paper thing. We do that, but we also want to honor how the customer wants to show up with us. And a lot of times they say, can you send a text or can you send it to my email? The system that we are creating, and it continually to evolve, will allow for an automatic text. And, we all get those. Again, our goal is to try to mirror how the customer shows up in their other lives. And I just got a text reminder from my doctor's office for an appointment. So we want to try to do something similar, thereby mitigating the problems that we have had with gathering information from our customers in a timely fashion. So that, we go live with a brand spanking new system next week. And so for us, it's making sure that we do have certain things in place that will help us, particularly around improving our SNAP payment error rate.
Right. I think, Sherelle, you had mentioned to us when we were talking about doing this session that you have an AWS workforce, which alternative workforce opportunities, and you have some folks who are at home, on site, etc. How do you manage the training needs of folks in different places in the organization when they're trying to do their work?
Oh, absolutely. And that was a little bit challenging. So as you mentioned, Jerry, for those of us who may not, or those of you may not be familiar, Tennessee adopted many years ago now, many being over 5, this notion of AWS, which is Alternative Workstation Solution. And basically, it just means that we're virtual. When you come to a Tennessee office, we don't have a whole lot of staff in the actual office. Now, for those people, our customers who want to come to the office, Absolutely. There is an office in their county. But for the majority of the work, we found that we were getting more productivity from staff if they did not have to just sit behind a desk and do their work, that they could do it in an alternative location. This has been amazing for us over the years because we were actually already virtual when the pandemic hit. We didn't really miss a beat, simply because anyone could apply online and actually look where their case was without having to come physically to the office. Now, how does that translate in a training arena? Well, we first had to define what training is and what kind of training would require face-to-face and what kind of training could you do online. And so what we did, like right now, if it's a big major overhaul to what we are trying to do, i.e. new system, we have a more blended approach that leans more close to bringing people into office. Our surveys, and we do a lot of surveys to see how we're doing. What do you need? What are your wants? One thing that our staff said is, if it's a big change, we definitely think that we learn better face-to-face if possible. However, we do offer the AWS training module for those people who say, you know what, I learn better in this area. Now, you probably are asking, how do you know if people are taking it or not? One of the active things that we have as a matter of the system is we can tell when someone is actually in the system. Now, Jerry, do not ask me how they do that. That is totally above my understanding of technology. But there is a way that you can actually track where someone is, because everyone has, all of our forward-facing staff have laptops, state laptops. And so there's a way that you can manage their caseload right from their home. And there's a way to tell that through screen time, through the digital footprint whenever you're in the system, and through our training. The training modules are very interactive. Some of them will be more interactive than not, that you have, just like what we're doing here at Zoom. You may have a trainer that's in Memphis that is training people in the eastern part of our state. And for those of you who do not know, Tennessee is a pretty long state. Half of it is on Eastern Standard Time and half of it is on Central Time, which is another added reason why we need a versatility around training. And so we offer a blended approach, and it has been, we have not had any problems verifying that people are participating. And we've also looked at how someone is passing the test, so to speak. And that's Sherelle's phrase. Nobody else really uses it. But if we have someone that we think is struggling in the online community, then we can certainly send supports to them that will allow for them to come to the office or an alternative space where they're meeting with someone one-on-one. Yeah. But ideally, what we did is say, if we're going to do this transformation thing and technology thing, we have to have some benchmarks of everybody is doing this. So we first looked at technology, and we assume that's the route that that everyone wants to go until it's proven otherwise.
Thank you for that, Sherelle. You provided a slew of opportunities to provide training internally and externally, which is definitely a foundation for building performance there. I saw a question in the chat, interesting one too, and it tied earlier. It says, what's the decision process for the content that's delivered in this format versus in the classroom? That's from Stephanie Kurtz. And I think that goes back to, can you use this for isolated incidences, or is it for new staff? I think the key to this is that you can use it for anything you want to. So if you are having a SNAP issue, and let's say you're one of those states that know exactly where you have your issue, top 4 error trends are here, you can create modules that specifically target those modules, and you work to reduce those rates. Casey, do you want to talk about that individual or modular approach versus a larger curriculum?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting the nail on the head with trying to break up that content in as small pieces as you can to make it most applicable to the audience or to a specific moment in time when a specific piece of information is new or a specific change is being made. And I think Sherelle was getting at sort of that same thing. You know, a lot of the decision making around where to have live training, where to have digital focused training, or where to have that blended training is driven by the demographics of your audience, the makeup of your audience, the specific learning styles of your audience. So understanding, you know, how people enjoy learning, but also understanding, you know, the practical limitations of that. So how spread out are we as an organization? How do we communicate regularly in our day-to-day with our colleagues across the state? And what's going to be a meaningful way to inject that learning into the day-to-day workflow of our employees and how they work today.
And Casey, if I could just add to that just a bit more, I think what you're saying, we are a data-driven department, meaning that we are very much in our data. We really try to use data analytics for predictions and also to kind of judge where we are. And that also helps us determine where do we need some training needs. What and as Jerry said, the modules and stuff are very fluid in terms of you can design based on what your needs are. And we just left our Memphis area where they have some bigger challenges around quality case management. Well, their training is a tad bit different because we have a targeted area. Then today I'm in East Tennessee, where they have a very high QC area. The technology will allow for supervisors in partnership with their directors and anything to really look at training that is individualized per district, per region. And then what we do is any new policy that comes out, well, that's kind of just an automatic technology. And the supervisor then just kind of reaffirms that training. And then we kind of monitor how well did the policy, did it affect anything different in the field? We kind of look at that in terms of data, and that helps us make any adjustments that are needed.
Excellent. Say, Sherelle, I think when we talked as well, you mentioned that Tennessee has done surveying of folks coming in from new hire training, et cetera. And you've asked them what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Could you give a sense to us about the top 2 things that folks are telling you about what they need in regards to training?
Absolutely. And as I said, what we're seeing is people that are coming to the State Department are more tech savvy. They understand it a little bit more, and they want real-time information. They want it now. They don't want to have to schedule an appointment or wait for a session. They really want real-time information. So that's one thing that we really paid attention to. How, we all have to have certain training to support what we are doing on behalf of our citizens, and how is the best way to deliver that. So one of the things that we do is make every FaceTime training available technology wise as well, because no 2 people really get it in the same format. Somebody may like face-to-face or in-person in-class training versus someone else who can really manage navigating systems of training. That's one of the things. And they want real-time information to refer back to. The other thing is the accessibility of it. We had to really think about, okay, well, if we're going to be talking about training differently, we've got to make sure our staff have adequate equipment to do this. And so we really invested a lot of potential around web-based training, and then making sure that our staff have their needs by way of technology, laptops, iPhones, whatever we wanted, whatever they needed to assess that, so that you don't have to come to the office to sit and watch a mobile an app or a training online. We made sure that our staff had laptops available to them with the necessary technology there so that they can be doing this at home. And it translates really, really well for both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Thank you, Sherelle. It is interesting. I mean, today we have to think about, who are our folks that are learners and how do they learn and what are the different locations or spaces that they could be learning, what modality works for them best, et cetera, and try to cater to all of them. And we talked a little bit about how training can be very focused. So when we're talking about really honing in on SNAP performance and trying to sometimes what we call stop the bleeding in regards to, errors and getting our performance and accuracy rates up, what about the regular trainings, the new hire trainings, et cetera? So Casey, as this audience thinks about how to support their workforce to improve performance, and improving performance means reducing workload because inaccurate performance causes unnecessary workload, a whole stream of it. Can you share with us this concept of a learning lab and the skills foundry that you work in? It's really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. So the Learning Lab, as we refer to it, is really a way to think about the importance of having dedicated learning specialists to help design creative and engaging digital training that draws people in and helps them build up those knowledge and skills. So it's an organizational design choice. Our specialists are really industry agnostic. We work across industries and topic areas, and you have a wide variety of experience. I like to bring up the example that I've helped train everything from how to make a great pizza to how to save a life in the field. So it's a really broad spectrum of learning design, but we're focused on the elements around that content that make it successful. So creative writing, instructional design, graphic design, and the technical scope of that learning interaction that help to really bring it to life. And then a skills foundry is a specific methodology that EY has invested in upskilling teams. So through really robust assessments and evaluation of specific roles and responsibilities and the skills that align to those roles and responsibilities, combined with an evaluation of where an individual fits on a spectrum of performance for that skill, we're able to, kind of harkening back to what we were talking about earlier, we're able to zero in on some meaningful assignment choices for that individual. So we know that, this individual falls lower on a specific communication skills for their job role. So we're going to really focus on targeting the assignment or the curation of communication-driven learning or communication-driven modules. So that's where we're taking that sort of skills-based approach and broadening it to a learning strategy. But both of those concepts are really based on the same idea that adults learn best when they have relevant, engaging digital learning that's giving them ample time to explore and practice their skills in a fail-safe environment.
Thank you, Casey. There's a question that came in from Stephanie. Stephanie's got some good questions today. It's the same question I had, so I'm going to read it because I thought of the same thing when we first started. It says, do you find that using an AI voiceover reduces the time it takes to update trainings? With how often some of these policies change, they need to update their training material, and things like voiceovers take quite a bit of time. Is there a trade-off for using an AI voice versus real person? So how does that work, and what's the answer to that, Casey?
Yeah, so generally it absolutely, we see that time impact in using an AI asset like that. And we've used those similar assets in a couple different ways, as narration that's disembodied from a figure on the screen, as video capture of an AI model in the moment. And we're able to fluctuate how we use those points and make sure that we're introducing media in a meaningful way. So not just for the sake of introducing media, we understand that sometimes having that message communicated to you or being able to add a little bit of transitional language between one concept and another helps to anchor that content in a more meaningful way. So we generally find that we're able to save time in the revision work and in the initial stand-up of getting to having that audio or that video readily available to put it into that final product. There is a little bit of a trade-off, as you heard, your ears probably perked up when that voice started playing. You thought, is that maybe a synthetic voice? Those voices have come a long way, even in the last couple of years, and we're expecting them to continue to get better and better. And there are some instances where you might need, a really empathetic, compelling voiceover for a character-driven audio piece. And in those pieces, we find that we still have a lot of success in using real voice actors to bring that to life. Those AI synthetic voiceovers, though, are really great at conveying a large volume of content in a media-focused way. So we see a little bit of a trade-off there, but that time saving is certainly there.
One last question, Casey. We've got about a minute until we go into Q&A, but I think it's fair to say, how does digital training help? And how does anybody know? Where's the evidence? And how will we know if it works when we start using it?
That's such a great question. And it's such a great question to ask early in this process, or early in evaluating or standing up either a learning organization, a specific learning program, or even sort of redesigning or reevaluating that learning program. Measuring that direct impact of learning really relies on taking that metric-driven approach, like Sherelle was talking about earlier, first. So setting up those metrics and understanding, how those metrics are going to directly tie back to the learning or learning initiatives. We know that there's some compelling data around a reduced time to competency for things like digital training or things like high quality in-person training. And so we also know that in-person training is great, but only as great as your instructor, or only as great as the resources that you have at your fingertips in that room at that time. And so, as we were speaking about earlier in some of the Q&A, I think focusing on democratizing that experience and ensuring that that is a consistent and accessible experience across the board has a lot of value. And the last thing I'll say is that I think it's clear that people learn better and retain things longer when they have the opportunity to apply those skills in the moment. So that's something that often gets a little bit lost in lecture-based classes, or even more interactive sessions where it's difficult to replicate those in-depth interactive sessions across a large organization. Good interactive digital training can give people the space to try those things, make mistakes, learn while they're doing, all in that fail-safe environment.
I would say, I'm sorry, Jerry, I was just going to say, yay, Casey, because she's absolutely right. One thing that the technology allows for you is to go into like a really a case. I mean, like a dummy case, and I call it a dummy case, but just go in and actually apply some of the techniques or things that we are trying to teach. It allows you that real-time opportunity to sit and actually enter data. I mean, really just become acclimated with how our business processes, which it can be lost sometimes in a classroom setting where you don't have that that real time sitting there and working through, and having someone also be there for you and provide those supports and navigational tools.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Sherelle. Okay, we are going to go into the Q&A session. This is where we love to hear from the attendees. I'm going to ask a question. We'd love to see your answers in the box, and see if we can answer any more questions for you that may have. But first question I have is, what is your, and think of it in terms of SNAP performance, improving SNAP performance, lowering error rates, because we all know that the error rates just got posted, so I know we're all looking at it. And we're thinking about, okay, getting back to normal business, and how do we get back to a place of strength in regards to performance of our program, whether it be SNAP or any other eligibility program. What's your greatest challenge in regards to improving your performance? And maybe I'll ask you, Sherelle, while we hopefully get some responses in the chat area.
Yeah, and thank you. Great question, Jerry. I think one of the thing that, and why I'm actually in East Tennessee today and talking to staff, is just feeling overwhelmed. What we are seeing, and I will probably say that other states are having the same issue, but coming out of a pandemic, we actually saw a rise in the number of people that were coming to us for benefits. And so imagine trying to, uplift a new system when we are having more foot traffic in the office while we're still trying to regale all of the wonderful things about technology, and also ask our staff to help our customers navigate the kiosks or those things like that. So one of the things that we are really seeing is just this feeling of being overwhelmed with just so much more additional work. What we are hoping in the next few months is to see, once we have made the transition out of the old system to the new, it will be more intuitive to help not only our staff, but our customers navigate a system with ease of training and with ease of support. Right now, it just seems like a lot. And so we're trying to be here to be supportive of staff, to say it's okay. This is definitely not unique to the times. We all feel stressed or overwhelmed at times, but how do we manage that as we continue forward towards the goal?
Very good. I was recently talking to your director of operations, who's also have a stellar experience, and our chat centered around, we've done policy memos, we've done policy blasts, we've done refresher trainings, training. How do we do this differently? Because it seems like all that effort put into what we've typically done may not pay off as much as we'd like it to sometimes in this new day. And it seems like, as I've watched this, when I saw this application, I'll say application, but this tool come forward, it really does change the way folks interact with the circumstance and the situation, sort of like an interview. And it as you go through the process and answer the questions, and I think, Casey, you may add to this when I'm done, is that you hope people make the wrong choice, so that there is an opportunity to change the way the brain maps in thinking. That's how I've heard it stated. Is that an accurate depiction?
Absolutely. Yeah. All that learning happens when you're making those mistakes and you're seeing the repercussions of those decisions. And so yeah, we absolutely put a lot of time and effort in making sure that those remediation experiences give that context and that follow-up that really is valuable for the learner, and brings up additional information that's going to really help anchor that learning points.
There's a question here that says, and I'm not sure you can answer it, but you might be able to describe how this might support the answer. So the question says, how do you evaluate worker performance for performance and promotional opportunities using this system? Is productivity and error rate tracked with technology?
So I think I'm not sure I can answer that question specifically, because it's going to be really organization dependent. So how you're tracking specific metrics and tying those to specific learning initiatives already is going to help dictate where you can see that meaningful change. So if you're able to do some comparative analysis on individuals who performed at a high success rate in training versus individuals who performed at a low success rate in training, and compare that to specific performance metrics, that's one way of evaluating that relationship. We've also found a lot of value in more consistent learner sentiment touch points. So finding those opportunities to reach out to your learner base to better understand over time where specific issues or problem areas continue to arise, even those that were addressed in the training specifically. So trying to, as Cheryl pointed out early, really listen to your audience and what they're telling you, in addition to looking at some of those more static metrics and finding ways to directly correlate them with specific learning metrics. Yeah.
I do think that states have their data about where their performance issues lie at a hot macro level and a micro level, and applying a focused training to help improve those levels can be tracked and identified as evidence. Can also then use this to help identify where other areas of training are needed, and to be able to flex and morph as your workforce and your performance changes. Like I said, I don't think that this would be something, maybe it's something to be talked about, but I don't know if it would be something you would use for performance tracking, but it would be something to be used for performance enhancing behavior would be, I think, the way you could just term it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You have a successful learning program when you're consistently evaluating the success of that program against the actual state of the organization in that day. If you're just putting courses out there, just promoting them and letting them fall by the wayside, that's not really program management that's going to be effective over time to make sure that that learning is still doing what it was originally intended to do.
Yep. Damon Elliott put a great answer in greatest challenges. Turnover rate, I know everybody has that. Staff being overwhelmed, definitely. Training new staff, which takes time for new employees to become acclimated to the process, so speed to work. Communication between divisions and systems used to process. I think what's cool about this particular tool is that you can use it. It depends on what how your work is situated in your state, but you can use it as a virtual, you can use it as a hybrid, you could use it as an individual approach, you could use it as a workforce approach for new employees, and tap into that real life virtual space that folks are in as they come into your organization. Those are all really difficult challenges. I hear you. Casey, there's a question here that says, to what extent do these trainings include information on bias? Some caseworkers might have negative opinions or beliefs about the type of person applying for benefits, which may influence how they treat and handle cases. Really good question.
That's a great question. And that is the kind of information that you as the subject matter experts are bringing to the room in these sort of collaborative conversations. So understanding what those pain points are for learners, but also what those barriers are for learners to be able to act effectively is how we get to scenarios that are authentic and real, and we're able to drive that behavior change. We've developed some specific training for other organizations that's focused on bias training and focused on identifying choices that are driven by those biases. And I think that there's certainly an opportunity, especially in that soft skills style training where we're interacting with another person one-on-one to evaluate some of that interaction, to provide that feedback again in a fail-safe area. You know, no one likes being confronted with information that's challenging about the way that they might be acting or perceiving the world, but it's valuable to provide that kind of feedback when you see that happening in the moment. And there was a question earlier here in the Q&A about, could you speak into the training and have some evaluation happen from that speech? And we have done some work with cognitive behavioral therapists and training for therapists working with individuals on cognitive behavioral therapy to evaluate, you say a statement and you're evaluating the tone and delivery of that statement. And so having some feedback on that at an empathetic level is certainly valuable. I know that question was asking if you could evaluate the speech that's being said and give feedback on the content of that speech. It's not something I specifically have experience with so far, but I do think we're headed in that direction.
Yep, very good.
And if I could, Casey and Jerry, just to say this too, because these are really great questions. And I will say, training should be a tool used to support the mission, vision, and core values of the organization too. And for us, when we looked at who we wanted to be, part of that is also asking what you did not want to be. And then, really have some defining conversations, some uncomfortable or what we call seatbelt conversations about really trying to change how we see ourselves, how we see our customers. There are certain things you will not hear. We don't say the word food stamps. We because of the connotation, kind of getting to that question. But this kind of, for me, it starts with where your leadership really, what is the vision of the department, and then you develop your training to support your overall mission, vision, and core values. So for us, we really we take diversity and inclusion extremely serious, because the world does not look just like Sherelle or Jerry, but we need to make sure that those biases that we may not even be aware of are addressed. But there has to be first, in my lowly opinion, a want for an organization to even want to open the doors for that kind of conversation. Our civil rights training is totally online. And we actually have asked staff to be a part of that training. Like, we have members who are different. We have different religious group represented there. Just all many different things to show, how does this sound this way? So for me, although the training is really, really a staple, it is not where you would find the goals. It is there to help support the goals. I think that's kind of what Casey is saying too. So for me, it's more about what your department or your agency, how do they want to show up in the world?
Did we lose Sherelle?
I think we may have.
Okay, well, I was going to thank her for her leadership. She brings up leadership because she's one of the best I know in this business, and wish her and the TDHS crew luck as they go into statewide implementation at the end of this month. I want to thank all of you for attending today and sticking with us. We've gone a minute over, but we've enjoyed the company. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We will do our best to answer the questions that are in the chat. Thank you all.
All right, to close this off, on behalf of APHSA, I want to thank our panelists for their contributions. I'd also like to thank all of those in attendance. I want to remind you to register for the NextAPA Conference this October. I also remind you that this webinar will be shared in the days ahead. Look out for that email and have a wonderful day.